All right, today live review of the Weller Special Reserve Original Wheated Bourbon. This is from the Buffalo Trace Distillery, owned by Sazerac. Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, 45% alcohol or 90 proof. This is chill filtered, but of course, for Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, there's no color added. This is a mash bill that has roughly 15% wheat in it. We don't know the exact mash bill, but it's a wheated bourbon. It might be something like 70 corn, 16 wheat, 14 barley, or something like that. But ultimately, it is a wheater, no rye. 4 to 7 years of age in new charred oak barrels. And yeah, that's pretty much the skinny when it comes to this guy. This is the bottom end Weller product. The Buck Standard Weller, if you will. Um, so we're gonna rate this out of 100. 25 for aroma, 25 for palate, 25 for finish, 10 for texture, and 15 for my personal experience. Screw cap. Screw cap today. Whoop. And of course, a Weller. Yes, the name Weller. William LaRue Weller, supposedly the first person to produce straight bourbon with wheat instead of rye. That's where this name comes from. At the end of the day, get that spinning, and we'll just rest that just for a minute. But yeah, up here in Canada, we haven't got any bourbon on the shelves except for whatever is left over in Alberta, basically. Or there's actually, if you're from a non-red state, your bourbon is allowed to be sold in British Columbia, I guess. Weller Original, Weller Special Reserve. I don't know what you would call, if you would call that original or not. Um, I don't. It's like the Buck Standard bottom Weller. It's the cheapest one. Still impossible to find. Like even before Donald Trump madness, this was still impossible to find in Canada. The only reason that I managed to get a bottle was because it was imported for a festival, and there was not very many left when I got to it. So these still are in Canada basically impossible to get, even when things are normal in terms of alcohol sales. So I did manage to pick up one, but any of the like more robust offerings from Weller, like the 12 year or like the full proof or single barrel or literally any other offering is basically impossible to come by. Um, and even this one is basically not possible to get. With the exception of when it comes to whiskey festival time, there are some that get dropped. But of course, nowadays, with things being weird about American alcohol in Canada, um, basically, I'm assuming we're not going to get any allocation uh, festival season this year since we're not even selling it. So that'll be interesting. I'm curious to see what's going to happen come November. If we're still not selling U.S. alcohol, there's going to be maybe a whole lot of more other stuff, which might be cool. Um, but yeah, still hard to get Weller products up here. Um, but yeah, the Buck Standard Special Reserve Weller. Um, just the typical Buffalo Trace weeder. So here's our natural color here from 4 to 7 years, roughly new charred oak barrel. Um, of course, there's no coloration possible. And we've been in Scotch world so long that this looks pretty dark actually to me, but that's because we just haven't talked about bourbon very much. Um, Obviously, the climate in the United States plus a new charred oak barrel is going to make it deeper than most non-sherried Scotch offerings. So, wow, that is really not that expressive. I had Weller 12 a few months back. It was bourbon. Yeah, I imagine it was. And that's kind of like the impression that I feel like I got when we first opened this was like, well, it's fine, right? It's not bad. It's just that it's a wheated bourbon. That's what it is. It's a wheated bourbon. It's not like, oh my God, this is, the best bourbon ever. It's overhyped, for sure. Um, Even for me on this nose, I don't find the it really jumping into the glass at me. Now, to be fair, we've done a lot of foolproof whiskey recently. Foolproof barrel strength or barrel proof or cask strength is really the term used in Scotch usually. We've done a lot of cask strength whiskey recently. So, like anything at 90 proof is still a little tame, even though the bourbon is typically going to be like pretty like intense when even with a lower proof. I'm actually just not getting a super duper expressive nose out of this today. Like there's like some oaky character, a little bit of that butteriness, some of that like slightly red fruit. Just kind of like that brown sugar caramel thing going on. But a little bit kind of corn grainy up front. Like it's not actually like shouting at me. We're having to dig a little bit. But typical bourbon notes, I suppose. And actually, if we just think about legs here, um, the legs off of this are pretty like fast running and gloopy for me. Um, so it's actually not even the thickest whiskey, if I'm being honest. Um, but yeah, like I'm actually getting a lot of what I would describe as notes related to the corn distillate, which is kind of weird because I don't. I find that sometimes with bourbons I have to dig for that note, but I think maybe like I've stepped so far away from bourbons for so long that that's really what's sticking out to me. That this is not a malt whiskey. Like kind of like dusty corn, kind of corn grain note seems like really prominent on this for me today. But overall, like yeah, kind of like buttery corn note. You do get slightly spice still. You still get some of that like brown sugar caramel. You still get a little bit of that like slightly red fruit. Mr. Cap, how are you? But yeah, the thing that hits me the most is actually just like the kind of the corn note, which is weird. Because again, I feel like a lot of times with bourbon, that's like at the bottom, and like the barrel notes are at the top. But today, again, I feel like I've had my nose in so much malt whiskey that The corn is kind of really sticking for me. Bourbon? No, this isn't bourbon. This is bourbon, if you can believe it. All right, so Weller Special Reserve, Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey on the palate. I was about to say Schlacheva, but I think it's just Cheers. There's that new charred oak spice note that I wasn't missing. That's so cinnamon. That's so... cinnamon nutmeggy. But I think it's just new charred oak barrel. Pretty sweet. Not like rye spice at all. Just... there's no rye in this, of course not. It's kind of like just... kind of creamy, kind of slightly buttery corn note. You get that like brown sugar, caramel, oakiness. But for me, it's like loud on like the barrel spices. You're saying cheers in French? Schlacheva? No, slancha. That's Gaelic. Yeah. So in Scotland, you would say Schlacheva or Slancha. I think in Ireland, they typically don't say the full, they just say Slancha. But you still say Slancha in Scotland too sometimes. Slancheva to your health. Yeah, I think that's the direct translation. Something like that. Something like about, it's like to your health or something like that. Oh. Good health. Yes, just good health. So slancha means health, and va is good. So slancheva would be good health, and then just slancha would be like cheers. Alternatively, here's the spelling. Which maybe doesn't help you at all, but that is the Gaelic spelling. Yeah, some good sweetness in here. Man, pretty sweet for a bourbon. Spelled just like it's pronounced, exactly. Just like Glengarry and Litchig. Can't forget Glen Murray. Yeah, man, to me it's like corny. Like it's like buttery popcorny today. It's like almost like caramel corn with a slight red fruit and like cinnamon nutmeg. Palate is pretty fucking lax. Spikes on the finish. Finish is like not bad actually in length. Finish is like medium length. Palate is like really soft though. Definitely like missing some punch on the palate. So my overall, like, we'll say quick form, the nose got some reasonable notes in terms of like horizontally, but the intensity is, it's fine. It's not like super intense. The palate's got, some sweetness, some of that buttery corn note, some spices, but is a little like soft. It's a little bit lacking of flavor. And then you kind of get like a bit of a punch into the finish, more spice, more oak, that kind of thing. It's probably like the palate is like the fuzziest for me. But really the whole thing is not great. It's fine. It's very approachable, and I think this is one of the things that I feel like I might have said about larceny before too, which is that these wheated bourbons are like very sweet and like more drinkable and less aggressive than some of the rye-based bourbons. But it comes at the expense of like less complexity. Like it feels like a lot of the like kind of green, spicy herbal components that come from rye are missing, and the wheat doesn't really add much flavor. It kind of just adds like it kind of like makes it softer. So you kind of get more of that kind of sweet note. Um, some more, like more smoothness, more drinkability, if anything. Kind of feels like it makes it softer at the expense of the range of flavors you could get. Um, and that's not necessarily like a bad thing. Again, like I kind of felt like, hey, like for example, Larceny Barrel Proof. Um, Really great flavor, really very drinkable barrel proof bourbon, and I might even prefer that over something that was like horribly challenging. But you can't like shy away from the fact that it might be reducing the total complexity of the flavor profile because there's no rye in it. Because of course we like the complexity that rye provides. Again, my favorite bourbon right now is still a bourbon that has maybe the largest portion of rye of any bourbon I've ever had. I get the feeling that it has like 30+% rye in it. Drink it? Oh, I've already drank some. Do you want me to drink more? We're just kind of discussing because to me, again, I feel like there's not a whole lot to this one. There's not a whole lot of more I can kind of develop on the nose. The palate is fairly tame, especially for bourbon. And I just like, that brown sugar caramel thing, oak and spice, slightly watery, frankly. And then kind of like more spice, more oak on the finish. Kind of like we've developed a little bit out of that like buttery corn note I was getting initially. That's kind of like going away now. Kind of more into that just like sweet note. It's fairly drinkable. It's fine. That's the way I would describe it. This is fine. And again, a lot of people like kind of lose their shit about Weller products because at the end of the day, every Pappy Van Winkle starts as a Weller Special Reserve. So in people's minds, they think, well, this is the same juice as Pappy. It's a cheap Pappy. And obviously, there's a difference than that. Like, Pappy is very, very specially selected barrels. But yes, all of the Special Reserve juice that ended up in Special Reserve at one point could have been Pappy. It's all the same juice that eventually, they chose where to put it. But it's not Pappy. It's not. And I can't imagine Weller Full Proof, even though it's going to have better selected barrels than this, and it's going to be at a higher proof. That's probably also not Pappy, but people go crazy for this brand basically because of Pappy, I think. It's fine. Like it's not, it's their bottom tier offering, right? You can't expect that much of it. How was the Infinity bottle? It was pretty good. The palate was a little muddled, I think, but had a pretty nice nose and a pretty nice finish. I think the like rough score that I said I would have gave it, like kind of like off the cuff, was like felt like the aroma was like over 20, but the palate was like 15 or less, and the finish was like maybe in the like high teens. Which is like pretty good for a random fucking concoction of stuff. But the palate was definitely like not optimal. There wasn't a whole lot of different flavor in there, and it was a little bit muddled. Like it was hard to like. There wasn't. It wasn't as intense and as interesting as you would want. So let's talk about some score here for this Weller Special Reserve. Again, nose mostly just initially we had that kind of like buttery corn note really sticking out. Some of that like cinnamon nutmeg spice, slight red fruit, maybe a little bit of brown sugar caramel in there. But kind of like medium intensity. But I mean, it's not too bad. We'll call it like 15. Now for the palette at a 25. First, I was getting more of that kind of buttery corn note into it, but now it's kind of mostly just like that, like brown sugar caramel kind of thing. Some oak into it, spice near the back end. Kind of comes across a little bit thin. Maybe like 15 too. 15. It's like, it's like better than, okay. Like it's good, but it's not like, blowing me away. All right, so we'll talk about the finish. Again, roughly medium length. We had a spike of those baking spices. Oakiness is obviously present. The rest of the notes, let's kind of see what else we can get. So initially get a spike of those baking spices. A little bit of like molasses there too, not bad. Oakiness is in there. A little bit bitter. Adventurous, you might say there's a chocolate note on the back end. I'll call it 16. So if we talk about texture, again, this one wasn't hitting me especially thick. But, you know, it's not like terribly like super thin. It's not like more 12 thin, lol. Um, it's probably like a 3 or 4, something like that. On closer inspection, it's worse than I thought. Is it worse than 3? I think it's just 3. We'll call it 3. So out of 15, my personal anecdotal, subjective opinion of this whiskey. And again, we'll try to ask the question: why would you buy this whiskey over any other offering? And we're gonna ignore the idea that like this is a hard to find premium product. We're imagining a world where this is available at MSRP beside other whiskeys that are MSRP at a similar price. We're not going to assume that this is hard to find by any stretch. We're just assuming that this is a Buck Standard Weller sitting beside a Buck Standard Elijah Craig and a Buck Standard Bull of Bourbon and a Buck Standard Jack Daniels single barrel or whatever is around the same price. And in that respect, okay, so this is a wheated bourbon. It's very, very much on the sweet and smooth side. If you don't want like it's a spicy rye component, you want something that's more smooth, easy drinking. Honestly, this is easier to drink than other wheaters. Like, honestly, I'd say this is easier drinking than Larceny. I'd say it's easier drinking than Maker's Mark. When it comes to wheated bourbons, this is definitely like hard on the smooth section, in my opinion. So the reason that you'd want to pick this up is not for its complexity, not for its texture, not for its like range of flavor or intensity or even price, but we don't take that into account when we make these ratings. You're gonna want this because it's smoother. It's a smooth bourbon, you know, kind of like a little bit more robust than maybe like your charcoal filtered Jack Daniels Tennessee whiskey. But still on the sweet and smooth side. You don't have the spiciness. You don't have that like kind of like weird banana fruit thing you get on Jack Daniels. That's kind of like where you're at. So it does have a bit of a place, but it's not doing anything like at a wild and interesting, right? Like the one, we'll say, case where you want to pick this bottle up versus other bottles is not really that big of a merit. So for me, like this particular offering probably lands somewhere around the forgettable mark. It's probably like a 4. We'll call it 4 out of 15. Because it's not bad. It's not like terrible, but like among the sea of bourbons, I'm not thinking about this one. It's quite forgettable in that way. I forget that I own it. That's a key benchmark. You know, if I forget that I own it, that's pretty forgettable by definition. I forgot this was even up there. So total here, 15 is 30, and 16 is 46, and 4 is 50, 53 out of 100. So 53 out of 100. We call this good. It's good. You know what? It's good.